Hello everyone, welcome to another race analysis video with Mo Allen. In this race I will be analyzing the Fresh Outta 24 Stage 5 race in the C category. This was ridden on December 24th, Christmas Eve ride. My warm-up was quite long for this actually. I warmed up for almost 30 minutes. It was cold in the garage and I just got in there and spun my legs just to get a good warm up in. As you can see in the beginning there, I started this ride out with a Zwift Racing Score of 494. So there are 70 riders to start in this category. This is a C category, or Zwift Racing Score 350 to 520. So I'm up towards the top of the C category. I've said it before, but after the Zwift Racing Score update, the Seed V3 update, I dropped back down to the C category to 475, I believe, a few weeks ago, and I've been steadily climbing up back towards B. My score does increase by the end of this. Wait around to the end and you'll see just by how much. So this ride is on the Coastal Crown Loop route, which is interesting because if you look at the Zwift Power description of this, it lists it as 15 kilometers and 98 meters of elevation, but that doesn't take into account the lead-in, which is 8.6 kilometers, which is quite substantial. And that lead-in includes the Mayan Mountainside KOM. So the route officially starts after the Mayan Mountainside KOM and going up the Itza KOM, but the total distance is actually 23.6 kilometers with 266 meters of elevation. So I am, as always, for a categorized race like this, going to stay with the front as much as I can. I'm not going to early on chase down any one or two riders. I'll stay with the group and see if they chase. Otherwise, I'll just stay with the group if they don't, either way. If there's a group of 3 or 4 going off the front, potentially with a race of this distance, I may try to follow it or chase. I've been climbing well. These climbs are not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also not an Alp, right? They're, 4 to 6 minute climbs each, something like that. So if I'm feeling strong, I may try to go with a group and just hang with them in the front. But I'm just hoping that the group stays together until the climb, and then I'll assess there. My recon for this was to read the Zwift Insider route description, as well as watch their ride-along video, which was actually quite helpful. I also, from the Zwift event on the Zwift Companion, saw that there were 2 power-ups available, a Ghost and a Feather, so that was also useful. The Ghost wasn't really useful to me. I didn't think I was going to try to break away invisibly at any time. So I was going to just use those right before getting another power-up probably, and not try to take advantage of being invisible. Unless the situation called for it for some reason, but my impression was that it wouldn't. So here we are with the group. Quite a subdued start. No one going too crazy at the front, so I was happy to just kind of continue the warm-up actually in this and keep an eye on the front. Always keeping an eye on the riders in the rider list, watching their watts. If I see the group string out, then I move up towards the front. Otherwise, I'm trying to stay in the back and and benefit from the draft, which I do quite well. Again, in this one at the end, you'll see my watts per kilogram versus all the riders around me. And it shows that I was more efficient. My rider weight is 95 kilograms. And I have, like high raw power, which means my watts per kilogram are actually a little lower, but all in all, comparatively lower. All in all, I think I raced this pretty efficiently and happy just to sit in here at the start. Also being aware of the Ghost power up, if any riders are using that, you gotta be aware if like a group of 3 of them popped up suddenly towards the front, you might want to cover that. So just trying to be aware of all those things. And now just knowing that I believe in a couple of kilometers, the Mayan mountainside KOM is coming. So at this point, I'm just sitting in, trying not to do too much work and just wait until that climb comes and see what kind of effort the group is putting out and hope that I can stay towards the front and climb with the front group. So here we are turning into the Mayan mountainside again, still part of the lead-in. Technically, not that that matters to how I'm gonna ride it, but large group to start. It's like, I don't know, 40 riders in this group, maybe something like that, if not more. So going towards the front here, never looking to be in the front and make anyone think that they need to chase me, but also just if I'm feeling strong, just trying to stay in the top, quarter of the riders, maybe top third of the riders on the climb, and try to mark anyone going off. Again, with my rider weight being 95 kilograms, I'm at a disadvantage going up the climbs, but I've been climbing well, so I can stamp out the power on something this relatively short. You can see there my 90-day PRs. My best in the last 90 days is 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So I feel like I probably have that in me for this one. Also knowing that after this, you got to go right up the It's a KOM. But at this point, I am feeling pretty good. I'm able to sit down and stamp out the power. Probably at this point averaging, 370-ish, 360 for this minute or so coming up the climb. So just trying to see what the group is doing and stay with them. I'm able to stay with them so far, which is great. I have a ghost power up, which isn't the best, but I'm gonna make the most of it. So here we are, maybe halfway up the climb, and I'm of two minds. I'm climbing well, able to climb seated, relatively controlled, but this group is large, right? So I know that some are gonna drop off, but I was hoping maybe I could, the group would string out a little more and I could stay with the front. Me being in a bunch sprint this large at the end, so this route ends with this very climb, actually. So at the end of the 23.7 kilometers, so a couple kilometers before that, exactly 2 kilometers before that actually, will be this climb. And so you'll see up here as it goes around and curves to the left and then around to the right, that banner that comes up, this is going to be the sprint finish. So I knew I would like it or prefer it if there were less people than this up the climb, but this is basically the first half, considering the It's a KOM is coming up. So that was relatively controlled. You see me turn the graph back on there. I turn it off when climbing sometimes, just not to obscure the distance to the riders behind, also not to have that graph play any negative mental part in case I have a moment of weakness and I get down into the yellow or something. I knew this would be a hard climb, and it was. Again, no one went too crazy, but it was definitely taxing. So here, just hoping that no one puts on the power on these little flats before the next part of the climb, and just gearing up. I have a feather power up now, which is better for the second half of the climb. So this It's a KOM starts off with some relatively low gradients and even some negative gradients. As you can see, it officially started, but it's not going straight up yet. You can see there in the segment data on the left that it's 3.8 kilometers in length with an average gradient of 2%. This gradient here that goes negative plays into that 2% average. It pitches up at the end quite substantially, I mean relatively. So still with the group here, 173 beats a minute, 310 watt average, which if you remember just a few minutes into the ride, it was at 264 watt average. So average substantially raised, not surprisingly by that effort on the climb, but I climbed well. You'll see at the end, I have a screenshot of my segment times and I got a PR on all of these climbs. The Mayan mountainside, first part of this climb, the It's a KOM climb, the two climbs combined, and then another PR beating the one that I just did at the end of the ride on the Mayan mountainside. So I climbed really well. It felt pretty good. You'll see I did make a bit of a tactical error in the last sprint, which we'll talk about when we get there. But here we go with some more sustained inclines for this climb. Still nothing crazy. The group still isn't going too all out. I'll say that I was worried when I did get demoted down to the C category with the Zwift Racing Score update, that I was worried I was miscategorized, but these races that I've done, and I've done several in this C category, or the 350 to 520 Zwift Racing Score range, they've been competitive. So it seems like I'm well placed. So that's been interesting to confirm there. So here with that first section done, I know that the rest of the climb is going to be more sustained inclines. So after that effort up both the Mayan mountainside KOM and the first part of the Itza, I know that it's time to buckle down here and really just keep an eye on the group. Happy again to be towards the front, or with the front, up the climb. I will say that looking at the watts per kilogram of the riders in the list sometimes, or initially seeing people up over 5 watts a kilogram sometimes was concerning to me, but I quickly realized that I could stay with the group despite those numbers, because 5 watts a kilogram for me is close to 500 watts. So I knew I wasn't gonna sustain that up this climb, at least not averaging. So here we are, last little bit of this climb, definitely feeling it. Got one rider off the front there. Not worried too much about that one rider. Happy again to be with the group and feeling pretty confident that I can cover any little surges. I have enough in me at this point to cover this little last bit. I use my feather power up and get over the top with the front 5 riders within the first 5 riders. So I turn the graph on there just to see my effort. And now just preparing to recover as much as I can on this downhill for sure. Let my rider weight carry me down. And I know that, again, with just 2 kilometers to go, so we're at 10.5 km to go here, and I know I've got 8 kilometers until the 8.5 kilometers until we have to climb again, and it's relatively flat until then, so just hoping the group stays subdued. So we've got about 25 riders in this group at this point, I believe. Happy to see this downhill here. I'll wind up the watts and just let it coast, get some recovery in, and get ready for the next climb. So here as we turn into the Mayan mountainside for the second and last time, I drafted well on the sections after the It's a KOM, conserve some energy, and feeling relatively strong for this climb. Feel like I would be able to cover some moves knowing how the other riders climbed previously. I was confident that I could stay with them at least for a little bit. I did take a look at some of the rider statistics of the riders that were registered maybe like an hour before the event. Quite a few more registered since then, but just kind of seeing what their 20-minute power was. Didn't commit those rider power numbers to names, so I didn't really know who was around, what the power output of the people around me were, but feeling good here. Top 4 or 5 riders. Just trying to stay with the front as much as I can. Putting out over 400 watts here to stay with the group, the front 3. So here we go with the front. There's one rider off the front actually, but with the front of this group. So here I am considering when to use my power up. Looking at this route profile section here, I wasn't actually sure if this 0.6 kilometers meant that the ride ended. So you see me hit the power up there, that was an error. With half a kilometer to go, I shouldn't have hit it there. I should have waited. But as I was saying, I wasn't sure exactly how much was left. So this was definitely an error. I should have known better, having climbed this several times, having seen the route profile, but that was a case of hurting, obviously, and not being clear a little mentally. So here I'm like, oh, I've made the mistake. And I see riders going by. You'll see me here actually kind of do a little bit of a sprint, but then get up to those riders and sit back down. Here, this was interesting too. If I was gonna go, I probably should have gone now, just a second earlier maybe. I didn't have a lot left in me, but here we go with the bunch sprint of this group. And it was a good sprint. Ended up coming in 7th overall on these results in Zwift power. As you'll see soon, I was 6th. So I don't exactly know why that was. I think all of those riders had heart rate, so I'm not sure why one didn't show. You can see there 3.2 watts a kilogram. And you can see here my Zwift Racing Score went up from 494 to 500. Again, 300 watt average. You can see my PRs there on the climbs, and here go the PRs I was mentioning. Oh, so that first Mayan mountainside wasn't a PR. It was my 3rd best, but the others were. So all in all, good race, good way to bring in the Christmas holiday. Glad to have gotten it done. I raced this at 12:12 p.m. local time, again in the freezing cold garage with the snow outside. So that's it for the Christmas Eve race. Again, I appreciate you all watching. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you think I made the right decision, the wrong decision, anything you would have done differently, happy to hear it. Like the video, subscribe if you're so inclined. Stay healthy, stay fit, and I'll talk to you all later.